All right, everybody, welcome in to Load the Box. I'm your host, Jordan Hawthorne, joined, as always, by the marvelous and the wonderful Jack Day. Jack, before we talk about the Vikings, whose special teams were not so marvelous or wonderful this past week in Arizona, how's your week been, man?
It's been all right. It's been a weird sports week in the state of Minnesota after coming off of the loss in Arizona because of a missed field goal. And the Wild announced, I think it was last night or yesterday in the evening, that Kirill Kaprizov has re-signed, so their stud is back and he's ready to go, which is great news. And then all of a sudden today, the Timberwolves fire their general manager. So it's just been kind of a roller coaster of a week, and that's pretty much the only way you can explain Minnesota sports in general. So I'm just sitting here and it's like to the point where can I even be shocked that all of this is happening anymore? But I'm looking forward to talking to you about this game in Arizona and the upcoming game here, the first game with fans at US Bank Stadium in like a year and 8 months or whatever it is. Excited to see that. I know there's just like watching some of the rookies from last year, like this stadium still hasn't seen Justin Jefferson hit the gritty in front of a sold out stadium. So I'm just looking forward to that. And I think we've talked about this and we'll get into it a little bit more later too. I'm feeling fairly optimistic still for some reason, which I don't know why, after I just told you about this roller coaster of a week, the entire state of Minnesota and the sports within the state are having, but I'm looking forward to this one. And I'm thinking there's a chance the Vikings can get back on track.
I am hoping that you're correct because I am the opposite. Optimistic Jordan was shot in the chest with a rifle this past weekend as the Vikings did fall on a last second field goal. And this is going to end up being the show's new like tagline, its headline. It all goes back to you saying in the offseason, this offense looks good. This defense is going to be rebuilt. I don't know about the special teams though. And what happens, Jack? Week one, an elite special teams performance. Joseph sends us to overtime with like a 55-yarder. We get into overtime, and then Cook ends up being the shucks. We end up losing because of that. But we had a punt in overtime that looked really good, and then this week we miss an extra point. We're down 1 point late in the game. 37-yard field goal, I believe it was. We trot Joseph out there, and he pushes it wide right. Just barely too. If you haven't heard Paul Allen's heartbreaking call where he thought it was good and then he finds out it's not good, it was awful. But Joseph missed the kick. They did not try and ice him, which I was just waiting to hear whistles. As soon as the ball got snapped, I was like, whistles. Tell me those whistles. I want him to be iced because, I'd rather him get 2 shots at it. There were no whistles. They didn't ice him. He just missed it without the ice timeout, though, by Arizona. Other than that, obviously, more things happened than just a field goal at the end of that game. There's a lot to dive into. Jack, I kind of kicked it off last week. I'll let you kick it off this week, but just before we get into it, I'm going to go ahead and tell everybody to get on over to twitter.com. Go to @LTB Vikings. You see the load, hang on, I guess it's load the box right there. LTB Vikings on Twitter, where you can see us live tweeting some of the games. You can see me randomly at 11 o'clock on a Sunday night going on theories about how the Vikings are always a bridesmaid, never a bride. There's all these, we try and keep it fun on the Twitter. You can also see show announcements and things like that there. You can follow my man Jack on Twitter @Jack_H_day, and then myself @JHawthorne16, and of course those are just right up there in the corners. But Jack, what'd you see out of this game? Let's start on the defense since we started on the offensive side of the ball last week. What'd you like? What'd you hate?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, the biggest positive from this game, I think there's a couple of positives from this game, but the biggest one moving forward for me was just seeing Danielle Hunter back in Danielle Hunter shape. I think like in Cincinnati, he had that one sack and it was like there's a couple plays where it just like it didn't seem like he was fully back. He was fully back this week. I know one of his sacks, I was talking to a couple people about this. One of his sacks where he just absolutely grabbed Kyler Murray with one arm and pulled him to the ground. I was just trying to explain to people. I was like, you don't know. I know Kyler Murray is a little dude, but the amount of strength that you need to have just a handful of a jersey and rip an NFL caliber player to the ground like that, it's absurd. Obviously, everyone knows how strong Danielle Hunter is, but it was good seeing him get in the backfield, be able to chase down Kyler Murray for 3 sacks, I believe it was. And then the other bright spot, and I tweeted this out during the game, I am ecstatic now for the return of Anthony Barr, because I think this linebacking room is going to be really, really good. Nick Vigil has been a pleasant surprise, especially in coverage. He has that pick 6, and we know what Eric Kendricks is going to lead this team in tackles, and he's also very solid in coverage. I think with those two kind of proving that they can play in coverage, if there's a base defense set, I think it frees up some more options for Mike Zimmer with what he wants to do with Anthony Barr. I think it'll allow him to really be more focused in the run game, and also possibly in getting after the passer, which we talked about so frequently as what he was good at doing in college, what he was going to go to the Jets and be good at for, well, I guess I can't say be good at for the Jets, because I don't think it's possible to be good at anything if you are on the New York Jets. But that is where Anthony Barr will come in, and I think he's going to help this defense in more ways than one, and I'm excited and looking forward to that. There were some negatives on the defensive side of the ball, though, with Bashaud Breeland still getting burnt. I think there was a couple busted coverages. The Rondale Moore touchdown, that kid looks like he's going to turn out and be a beast. He's a super freak athlete, and the wide receivers core for that Arizona team is it's terrifying. And I think it was Kyler Murray. He had a couple like backyard style-esque plays, but overall I was impressed with kind of how the Vikings were able to contain him. It wasn't like crazy. I know, like I said, there were a couple plays where he got away. The one where he broke out and found, like I said, Rondale Moore is just sitting there and there was absolutely no one in sight. But overall, I mean, if you would have told me they put up, what was it? It was 34-33, I believe the final score was. I thought that they were going to put up 37 points. Vikings held them to 3 points less than what I thought they were going to. And I honestly, neither of us went in this game feeling very optimistic. And I thought the Vikings played overall pretty well. There still were some downfalls. I still think this defense still needs time to gel together, which is unfortunate, because I think you and I both thought that wasn't going to necessarily be the case because of all these veterans. We weren't too worried about it throughout the preseason, at least. And I'm speaking for myself. I wasn't too worried. I was like, no, it's Patrick Peterson, Harrison Smith, Xavier Woods, Bashaud Breeland. It's Eric Kendricks, Danielle Hunter, Anthony Barr. Like, these guys will figure it out. They've been in the league long enough. They still need to gel together. And kind of my final thoughts on that side of the ball, I'm ready to see Cameron, the needle dancer, playing a little bit more at cornerback after we've seen the first 2 weeks of Bashaud Breeland. I'm not ready to kick Bashaud Breeland to the curb like I think some Vikings fans are, but I do think it's time to kind of get Cameron Dancer back out there. He had a couple nice plays towards the end of that game. And oh, by the way, he's really the only starting caliber cornerback that this team has past the year of 2021. So I think it's important to get him out there, get some reps. And like I said, he played fairly well. I think there was one missed tackle he had early on, but then after that he came back and had a couple pass breakups. So Cameron Dancer was actually a positive for me, while Bashaud Breeland was clearly the biggest negative.
Yeah, Bashaud Breeland prompted my dad to start asking me questions, which is when I can tell he's real frustrated, because he's looking, to his youngest son for the answers. And he's like, why is Bashaud Breeland out there? And I was like, I don't know, Dad. I really don't. I guess he looks good in practice. I guess they like what they're seeing on Tuesday and Wednesday in limited pads and the funny white helmets and everything. And then he was like, well, what happened to that Dantzler kid? And I said, I guess he didn't look good in practice, but I think, I think it's time for a change. And we were all, clamoring for him to come in. And then he had that pass breakup on AJ Green, and we all kind of went electric for it because, I'm a big Cameron Dantzler guy. I know he might not be an elite defensive back, but he is, again, it's one of those, like, I just want to see them make a change where they need to, instead of just sticking with, it's like, I'd rather see them lose to the evil they don't know than just keep losing to the evil that they do know. They know Bashaud Breeland isn't good. Okay, do something about it. Switch him out. Start signing guys off the street. Do something. Get drastic. Damn it, Mike Zimmer, your job's on the line. You're not going to last past Cleveland if you don't start making some changes. Like, there's a lot. But Dantzler was definitely a bright spot. Danielle Hunter, to me, was just the sport. We'll go ahead and do the defensive game ball here. Danielle Hunter gets your game ball, I'm assuming. With 3 sacks.
It's almost like a 50-50 shot between him and Nick Vigil, because Nick Vigil had that huge pick 6, which kind of brought the Vikings back into the game. I was like, okay, they have a chance at winning, and they got everyone's hopes up, and then obviously that all crumbled with special teams. But I think we can devote our time to never talking about special teams again on this show. And I don't think other than the fact that of this, what you just said at the beginning of the show, that this might be a catchphrase moving forward, but I'm not going to say anything positive about special teams. We learned our lesson after last week and what happened in Arizona. I am done. Like I said, I'm optimistic. Not about special teams anymore.
Yeah, I think this is going to, we're going to go back to the let's go for two. Let's start going for two. Kicker only needs to go out there in game-winning situations. And if they miss, honestly, we can just start going for it on fourth down. Start going for it in these situations. Say, I don't care that we're down by 1. We're going for the end zone. We're taking 3 shots. Hail Mary. Here we go. It's just so frustrating as a Vikings fan to see this happen time and time and time and time again. All throughout my life, all throughout my father, who is 56 years old's life, all throughout every Vikings fan's life, no matter their age, everybody is going to have a story about a missed kick. And some of them are in bigger moments. Seattle 2016 or 2015, the Falcons in 98. Those just, oh my God, there's so many. But this was luckily in week 2. It was against Atlanta. The season is not over, but flipping over to the offensive side of the ball, like you said, Danielle Hunter is back. Just to finish my thoughts on the defense before we move into the offense. And I agree with what you're saying about Anthony Barr. The linebacking co coming together, playing that base defense, which we don't see a ton of, but when we do, knowing that Vigil is more than competent, I think we could say at this point. I think he is, he's going to step up. He's going to end up being one of the best signings in all of free agency. Hopefully he continues to play like this. So Vigil and Kendricks can really be the linebackers, and Anthony Barr can kind of just be a weapon, in the run game, in pass rushing, whatever we need him to do. So I'm excited for that, but we'll talk a little bit more about that moving into the Seattle game. Flipping to the offensive side of the ball. Oh man, I don't want to complain too much, but we were texting about this already a little bit today. I would have liked to see the second half offense come out with a little bit more of a fire underneath them. It felt like that first half we were gung-ho, everything was going our way, and we go into the half down by 1 or up by whatever. I don't exactly remember which one it was. But then we come out in the second half, and we just seemed sort of flat. The Vigil had the pick 6, but it didn't seem like we had that same explosiveness. Now, maybe that's because KJ Osborne opened the game with a big 60-yard touchdown catch. I don't know, but I like the bright spots. Again, the Vikings might just have themselves a wide receiver 3. It's amazing. It's nice seeing KJ Osborne he's slowly, it's 2 weeks in, but slowly he's becoming a dependable late game target. Cousins went to him twice on a quick slant to get Greg Joseph an easier field goal. So, Cousins trusts Osborne, and Osborne's making the plays. He did score on that busted coverage, but I don't know. Maybe it's just because we lost the game. Maybe I would be completely different if we ended up winning this game. Jack, what are your thoughts on the offense? Because to me, it seems like the play calling and everything was a little flat in the second half, and it seemed like we were just trying to go back to being conservative old Vikings. What did you think from this game this past Sunday?
Yeah, I'm not actually. I know there's a lot of people that are kind of torn on how Kubiak has been in his first 2 games. I've liked what I've seen from him, but there's certainly aspects that I agree with you where there's times where it's I think it was it Aqib Talib? We talked about this on my other show. I wasn't a huge fan of the broadcast by any means. I don't know how you felt about that.
Love Gus Johnson, but
but Aqib Talib said something. I don't remember what happened. I think it was when they go for it on 4th down and the Vikings got to stop. I don't remember. There was a weird situation where they got the ball back in good field position, and he was like, "This is where coaches take a shot at the end zone," and they didn't do that. They handed it off. It's there has to be a certain level of aggression that this offense has to have, and they're not really showing that. So that aspect of it is frustrating, but there were several bright spots. I mean, I think you and I both talked about this last week. No one knew how in the hell this offensive line was going to stop Chandler Jones, and that offensive line came out and they played extremely well. This is
one sack. Sorry.
That's it was okay.
About.
So, yeah. So 1 sack, if you were to tell me before the game that they held Chandler Jones to 1 sack, I would have been shocked after the performance he had the week before. And on top of that, Rashad Hill kind of is still the weak link to that offensive line. And I'm ready to see Christian Darrisaw. I don't know when that is going to be. I can talk about the injury report here shortly. He was limited at practice again today. But if you get him out there the youth on that offensive line, I just feel like it's bound to find success and just it's bound to kind of on a XY axis. I keep doing this with my hands, but kind of go upwards. I think this offensive line is on an upwards trajectory, which we haven't been able to say in the last 3, 4, 5 years. So that's a huge bright spot for this team. I think, like I said, I used this analogy probably 3 times already. I think it's going to be a little bit of a roller coaster ride to get there, but it's heading in the right direction. And I wrote an article on this today, so I had to bring this up too, because it's going to bother people. I don't know. It just, people are so torn on the quarterback for this Minnesota Vikings team. It's been this way since he signed that monster deal a few years ago, but he just did something that only Peyton Manning has done more than him now, which is have a passer rating of 90 plus in 16 consecutive games. He broke Peyton. It was Peyton Manning and Steve Young both had, it was like a 15 game span. He got to 16. And then the next, and like the one that's holding the record is Peyton Manning with 23 consecutive games. So that is impressive. And on top of that, I think that's almost since, I don't know if that would be the exact right math, but it's almost since that blow up game against Atlanta. It's got to be close. It goes back towards a couple games after that last year where everyone was like, what is going on with Kirk Cousins? Like, even the people that didn't like Cousins were like saying, this is not normal. Kirk Cousins throwing 3 or 4 interceptions like this. That's not who Kirk Cousins is. And he's turned it around. And on top of it, I think both of these plays were on the same series. He had a 29-yard run, which is huge for Kirk Cousins. We've called for that mobility. We've wanted him to use his legs for so long, and we got to see that a little bit more. And on top of that, there was a play where the pocket broke down, and he scrambled out to the left and it wasn't the greatest throw. Justin Jefferson had to dive, but he threw Justin Jefferson open in the end zone as he was sliding out to the left and the pocket was collapsing. And I was like, that was the point of the game where I was like, we've been waiting for this for so long. We haven't seen this. Instead, normally he falls over. He gets clipped up by his feet and he falls over right there. Instead, he found a way. He kind of maneuvered his way out to the left of the pocket and he delivered a pretty damn good throw. And that was exciting for me. I think the obvious, Dalvin Cook had a good game. KJ Osborne, it's fun seeing that. It was weird that we're seeing Justin Jefferson have some uncharacteristic drops, which is unfortunate. There was a drop towards it was that last, excuse me, I'm talking too fast. That last drive of the game where it was kind of a diving play, but that's a ball that Justin Jefferson caught 10 out of 10 times last season. And he's had a couple of those this year where it's like, yeah, sure, the ball might have been behind him, but those are balls that I think Vikings fans were so used to him catching a season ago. And I'm not concerned about it yet, but I think he's going to get that turned around. But it's exciting knowing that KJ Osborne is kind of waiting there for whenever apparently Adam Thielen is supposed to start regressing too. And I'm still waiting to see that because he's still balling out. But it's fun having 3 legitimate wide receivers. It kind of limits the use of Herndon and Tyler Conklin, which I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because if KJ Osborne's coming out and playing as well as he has been, and you have Dalvin Cook coming out of the backfield, this offense has firepower all over the place, and it's going to continue to be very good. And I'm hopeful that the defense can kind of catch up with it.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. And this is where I'm going to stop complaining a little bit. And I don't want to be like Debbie Downer on Negative Nancy, but like I have to, because we lost the game. It just seems to me, and again, I know you're in optimism mode, and we're about to switch over to Seattle, where I might be an optimist. I don't know who I'm picking in the Seattle game. I don't know what I feel just quite yet, because I'm still pretty numb from that kick on Sunday. But it just seems like, okay, so we have 3 good wide receivers. If we're going to go that far and say KJ Osborne is good now, then like, okay, we're going to be playing 3 wide a lot. Well, playing 3 wide a lot doesn't exactly fit into Mike Zimmer's pound the beef mentality of just run the ball 50 times a game and, win 17-13 matchups. So it just kind of seems like those conflicting mentalities versus what the personnel says. Like, we pay our quarterback so much money and then we want him to just manage games. And the whole thing just has me frustrated and it has me confused, because I want this team to air it out. And I texted you today and I was like, we were up 13 points at one point in that game. And we didn't get the ball with a chance to go up 20 or 21. They scored on the next drive. But I wanted to see us come out, and I wanted to see us put the pedal to the metal and start, breaking some spirits. We need to start breaking some wills. And I liked your response. You were just like, that's just not who Mike Zimmer, that's not the team. Like, that's never going to be how Mike Zimmer sees the game of football. He's going to say, okay, we're winning, let's not lose the game instead of like, let's just go out here and just take this game by the horns and really, rough them up. So it just, I don't know. It just, I'm so frustrated with this team right now because another thing that I don't think we've said on this show yet, we said it before while we were waiting to go live. This team is 2 or 3 plays away from being an undefeated football team coming home to play a Seattle team where, yeah, Seattle might end up being favored in that game or whatever the case may be, but like they have a shot at being 2-0, home opener, 3-0, and then you can play the Browns. And you started the first month of your season 3-1 at that point, or at least at the worst 2-2, and now we're looking at a thing where I text you before Sunday even happened. And I said, it's entirely possible this team is going to start 0-4. And I don't know if the Vikings would start chopping heads off that early in the season and start, making changes. But it definitely seems like Mike Zimmer's seat continues to just heat up and heat up and heat up. And it's kind of nerve-wracking. Talking about game balls for Arizona's game on Sunday, I would probably give mine to like the offensive line. Just 1 sack against that front 7 feels pretty good to me. So I would have to give it to maybe not Rashad Hill. I said in last week, I said like, oh, Tyler Conklin, because he's going to have to be chipping Chandler Jones a lot. Sure enough, he was out there chipping Chandler Jones a lot. But the big guy, I think, obviously, is Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook had a really good day on Sunday. Unfortunate to see him limp off the field a couple times. But, Jack, who would you give your game ball to before we move into the Seattle game?
Yeah, I like picking the offensive line, but I think I just want to give it to just because I have a question for you after this too, kind of going back to this, what you were just talking about. But I want to give it to KJ Osborne just because this franchise and the fan base has been starving for a legitimate wide receiver 3 probably since Jarius Wright left in 2018 or whatever that year was. They've been trying to get veterans in here. There's been the Tajay Sharp experiment. There's just been some kind of weird instances. And on top of it, I still think D.D. Westbrook is a legitimate wide receiver 4. And I think and then it kind of limits. And this goes back to something that also was circulating around Twitter that kind of got me fired up. And I wrote another article on this yesterday. The Vikings they had drafted 11 rookies and 0 of them played an offensive or defensive snap against Arizona. That was I think I was expecting that almost going into the season when you draft. Well, not other than Christian Darrisaw, because Christian Darrisaw has been hurt, so I don't really count that. But Kellen Mond was not going to play right away. That was never in the plan. He's a developmental quarterback. We knew that. I think Wyatt Davis was probably looked at as the next one that was going to start. But you had Oli Udoh step up, and Oli Udoh's playing good football. Oh, no, we found a competent right guard, people.
Right.
Let's freak out about it. And it's like Zimmer completely rebuilt his defense with veterans because he saw what happened last year when you throw out a bunch of rookies. And I'm not saying the defense has performed well with all these veterans, but I mean, you're going to want a guy like Everson Griffin or Stephen Weatherly or DJ Wanham even in year 2, probably over a guy like Patrick Jones II, who's still kind of learning the ropes a little bit. It doesn't make sense to me. They had a free agent. They drafted Chaz Surratt in the 3rd round as well. They add Nick Vigil. Like they added pieces on that defense on every single aspect that they drafted somebody at. So it just wasn't in the playing cards for these rookies to come in and play right away. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. So I don't know why people are freaking out about that. But my question for you is, watching this game and what we were just talking about, going back to like Mike Zimmer and like kind of how the offensive philosophy is in Minnesota, was it just that much more frustrating for you? Because I think the answer is yes for me on this. But watching how Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray operate that offense, it's just so different. Like they're willing to go for it on 4th downs. They're willing to air it out on plays. Like I think, was that another 4th down play where it was like 4th and short and it wasn't a blown coverage, but Mackenzie Alexander, it was Christian Kirk. Was that 3rd or 4th down?
I think that was 4th.
So that's the same thing that happened in Cincinnati. Like we're seeing these teams that are willing to take shots on 4th. And then I don't think it was 4th and short. It was probably like 4th and 4, 4th and 5. But he took a shot on Christian Kirk, delivered an absolute strike. Like Cliff Kingsbury puts his trust in his quarterback. And I don't think we have that here in Minnesota.
Yeah, so the frustrating thing to me, because like you cannot blame Kirk Cousins for any of these losses. They just have not been his fault. He did his job. He got us to overtime. Then he got us into field goal range, and then Dalvin fumbled. Not Kirk's fault. Then you go to the next week, and Cousins gets us down the field, gets us into chip shot field goal range to win the game, and our kicker shanks it to the right. He doesn't. He pushed it to the right. And again, it's just not Cousins' fault. You can't expect Cousins to score a touchdown when you just need to score 2 points to win the game, because the play calling, it doesn't make sense. You're not going to go out there and start taking risks once you're at like the 20-yard line. You're just not going to do that. So you can't blame Cousins for this, but what's frustrating to me is watching Joe Burrow he's less of this, but just like some of these younger guys that are willing to use their athleticism to get around. Watching Kyler Murray play, I was really mad until he threw 2 bad interceptions, and I was like, oh, okay, so like at least Kirk doesn't usually do that. Like he doesn't, throw a ball directly to Nick Vigil that gets intercepted and taken back usually. And
minus the Atlanta game.
Well, the Atlanta game was a whole different thing. Oh, on Monday Night Football, I think that's more of a rumor than anything. But like, it's frustrating to me seeing just like Cousins. We have to get the ball out quick, because if we don't get the ball out quickly in this offense, Chandler Jones would have killed Kirk Cousins on Sunday. Like the offense just has to be played that way versus a guy like Kyler Murray who can hold onto the ball for 15 seconds because he's just going to backyard football his way around, and eventually somebody finds themselves open. I've been talking about that with Aaron Rodgers. It's the number one thing I look for when I'm looking at quarterbacks in a draft is, can they create time for themselves? And do they keep their eyes down the field? Ian Book out of Notre Dame, really good at creating time for himself in the pocket. Never kept his eyes downfield. He would create time for himself. He would get outside, and instead of pulling up to look, he would just run the ball straight. And that's why I don't think Ian Book's going to take any NFL snaps. It's frustrating to me to see that. And then it's also frustrating if we're going to have a defensive-minded head coach, we got to stop letting teams score 30 plus on us on a regular basis. If Seattle comes in and they have a really potent passing attack, this is a good transition, I think. Seattle has like the number 1 rated passing attack, deep passing game or passing attack in the NFL. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Russell Wilson. They got a good group of guys on that offensive side of the ball, and they're going to try and stretch the field against Minnesota because the secondary is not exactly, vaunted and intimidating right now. People have been picking on Bashaud Breeland for a few weeks, and if he gets to play any plays, I guarantee you Russell Wilson throws directly at him to see, okay, prove yourself, guy, because I don't think you're able to. So it's starting to get to the point with me where I'm like, okay, we keep losing these games, and Zimmer's defense is giving up points. At some point, if you have a defensive head coach and your defense is bad, you have to, then let's go with the offense and let's embrace the offense. And I don't know. I think I'm very frustrated, and that's why I keep talking about the offense. And I'm surprised I didn't have a little poster of Eric Bieniemy hanging on my wall this week. But it seems like it's headed that way. We'll get into game predictions, everything like that. Jack, I'm going to pass it over to you. What excites you about playing Seattle besides the thousands and thousands of screaming, rabid Minnesota fans that are going to be in attendance?
I think one of the biggest things is just the fact that it's at US Bank Stadium and not in Seattle. It seems like every game they play there, it's a Monday night or Sunday night game in Seattle, which is one of the hardest buildings to play in the entire National Football League. And I think US Bank Stadium is up there. And I think US Bank Stadium is going to be at a whole nother level because the fans have wanted to be back in the stadium all throughout 2020. It's going to be a sold out crowd. They're going to be jacked up about this game, and they're going to be fully behind this team still. I think if you start losing, if you start 0-4, that's when the fan base is going to start going you know what, maybe this team isn't worth my time going out to these games. And that's just typical kind of in Minnesota. There's fans, and that's how it works everywhere. If a team isn't winning, the fan base isn't generally going to want to go to their games and spend a lot of money to go into the stadium. But I'm excited to see the reaction from some of these young guys. Like I said, none of the rookies played in that last game last year, but none of the rookies from 2020, I just said last week, none of the rookies from 2020, which there are several of them playing, by the way, even though they didn't all play in the first 2 weeks of 2020. Let me remind you of that. I'm excited to see them get to have that experience because I think US Bank Stadium is such a unique experience for players. And I think, like I said, seeing Justin Jefferson get a touchdown, that place is going to erupt. And I think just having, excuse me, my goodness. I think the fans are going to be fully behind this team, and it's going to make it a hard place to play for Seattle. And that's why I'm feeling a little bit more optimistic. The Vikings know this is a must-win game. Mike Zimmer knows this is a must-win game. And it always seems whenever the Vikings play Seattle, they play them tough most of the time. I know there's been some games where it may have gotten out of hand, but like even last year with an atrocious defense, they were able to play them tough in Seattle. If Alexander Madison hits the right hole, that could have been a win. And this Vikings team in 2020 with a horrific defense could have been a playoff team, which is crazy to even look back at and say. A play that just sticks in my mind, I think bounce back in 2021, if he's able to see the field over Bashaud Breeland. I think that Cameron Dancer play with DK Metcalf, it was like a 4th and 10, and Cameron Dancer was right there. He just didn't get his head turned around to make a play on the ball, and DK Metcalf went up and grabbed it. But I think that is how this game is going to be decided, is if the Vikings secondary is able to man up somehow with the star power. It's similar to what we just saw in Arizona. There are stars on the Seattle offense, and Russell Wilson is a bad man. He's a very good quarterback, very similar to, not necessarily, I don't know if he necessarily still has the same speed that Kyler Murray has, but he is the same way, where if the pocket starts to collapse, he is prolific at making time with his legs. That's how he's killed the Vikings in years past. I was at that game where Blair Walsh missed that field goal, where he's like running around similar to what we saw with Kyler Murray playing some backyard football. And the Vikings are going to have to do a good job at being able to contain him. I don't think they did a perfect job with Kyler Murray, but the pass rush and the defense mixed with the crowd noise, I think it's going to be electric in that stadium. And I think the offense is going to be able to put up points on Seattle's defense. Both of these teams are coming in with a very sour taste in their mouth after losing in heartbreaking fashion a week ago. So it's going to be a good game. And like I said, I'm feeling optimistic, and I think the Vikings come out on top.
So I am going to break this game down. And again, I'm going to try and stay impartial because I really don't know how I feel. But so I made not a hefty bet, but I had an underdog bet week 1. And I picked the Raiders to be one of the winners on this underdog parlay. And there were 3 teams. It was like Miami, and then I can't remember who the other one was. But I picked the Raiders because I was like, they're opening that stadium to fans. And that place is going to be electric. There's no way they can lose in that stadium. And so they, of course, ended up beating Baltimore. And that's kind of the same wavelength that I'm riding. Where you can't tell me that the Bengals' rabid fan base in the jungle in Cincinnati week 1. I mean, you could just tell on TV, like that place was electric, and that's the Bengals stadium. And like, don't get me wrong, the fan base is not like that. Like they just don't have that, it's an outside stadium. They don't have the dome that's just reflecting everything back down at the field. So like that place was that loud. I can only imagine what Minnesota's going to look like. I do think the season is young enough that the fans kind of have that like, we are proud of this team. We can cause the Seahawks to not be able to get plays off and have to, do all this. Like, I do think the fans are going to be going crazy. So I think that what's going to be crucial to me is finding that balance of, look, we want to run the ball because we paid Dalvin Cook a lot of money and he's very good at his job. So we want to establish that run game. But when we decide to throw the ball, 1, we need to stop waiting until 3rd down and 3 to take a 20-yard deep shot, because I've seen that 3 times this season, and maybe I can countless times since Cousins has been here. Take your deep shots on 2nd down or 1st down, and if it's 3rd and 3, move the chains and then worry about pushing the ball down the field. I'm tired of seeing him like throw a sideline fade on 3rd down and short, but like, I want to see this offense get a little crazy. I want to see him come out of the gate with like okay, look, we're opening up the playbook. We're going to push the ball down the field. We're going to line up in the shotgun some. And I said it last week. Oh, yeah, I said it on last week's show. I want to see the run game be a complement to the pass game, instead of the run game being the meat and potatoes and the pass game being, we'll do this when we need to do it, or when we're down, or, whenever the situation calls for it. I want to see us pass the ball, and I want Mike Zimmer to kind of have that awakening. Will he? I don't know. But flipping over to the defensive side of the ball, I do think that it's the Cameron Dantzler, like, redemption game. He has that opportunity to make up for the DK Metcalf mishap that happened in the lights in Seattle. I think he's going to play better. I hope he gets more playing time than Bashaud Breeland. But by the way, Bashaud Breeland, out of 110 defensive backs this season, is ranked 110th. He's the worst in the league. Like, he's really bad. Like, it's not just us. Like, this is PFF. He's really bad this season. So hopefully Dantzler or Boyd, they get to get in there more. I think that the secondary is going to play a big role because I do think that the front seven is going to be able to slow down the run game. And so I'll jump into a score prediction really quick, and then we'll give game balls just because I'm talking myself into it. I think this game is close, and I'm going to go ahead and do a little spoiler here. I don't see the Vikings opening up the season 0-3. I just can't. I'm going to pick us to win this game. I'm going to pick us to win this game 34-30. And I think it's similar to last week.
I appreciate you picking it by 4 points instead of 3.
Yes.
I really appreciate that.
Oh, God, no. We'll not win it. No. We're going to be up by 4. They're going to drive down the field. Cameron Dantzler, interception, seals it. Everyone, feel-good story. Everyone knows I'm the professional wrestling fan that loves the big, happy stories with perfect beginnings and endings. But this is where the spoiler comes in. I'm picking us to win by 4 points this week. And I'm going to go ahead and this is if we win this week, we're beating the Browns next week. We will open the season 2-2, and this whole fan base will be electric playing the Lions to get back to positive, get above 500. So I'm going to say the Vikings are about to win game 1 of what will turn into at least a 3-game win streak, and then I honestly forget who we play after Detroit, so I don't know. But yeah, give me the Vikings this week just because I have to, and honestly, if they don't win this week, I think the season is... You don't make the Super Bowl after going 0-3. You just don't. So, Jack, what are you thinking?
Yeah, like I said, I think the Vikings, I'm feeling optimistic. I think the Vikings come out on top of this one as well. I think the key, like I said, you have to find ways to stop Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. And that all starts with getting pressure on Russell Wilson. Not only getting pressure to Russell Wilson, but when you get your hands on Russell Wilson, you have to make sure you get him on the ground. You can't let him make time with his legs, because with how the Vikings secondary has performed, they are going to struggle if you can't get pressure on Russell Wilson, locking up DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett has actually been the better of the two through the first 2 weeks. And I also, flipping back over to the Vikings offensive side of the ball, I think this could be an absolute monster game for Dalvin Cook if he's healthy. He's the only Vikings player that did not practice today. Sounds like he was out there during the reporting where the reporters had access to it. So doing light stretches and stuff. Didn't see him in his press conference. Like, they were too worried about him playing today. Anthony Barr, Christian Darrisaw still limited. Patrick Peterson, Bashaud Breeland limited. And then I think Eric Kendricks was also limited. I think that rounds it out. I don't have it up anymore. But I think this could be a monster game for Dalvin Cook. Derrick Henry just went off against Seattle's defense. And it's not what, and we talked about this last year in the same time when we were playing Seattle last year. This Seattle defense is not what it used to be. There's still some talented players on all 3 phases of that defense. Bobby Wagner and Eric Kendricks both are the top 1-2 punch with tackle leaders in the NFL through 2 weeks. He's still a stud, but I think the Vikings, I don't necessarily think the Vikings defense is going to have a phenomenal game. But it just seems, like I said, with the crowd noise, they're going to have everyone on their side. It's going to be a completely different kind of feel for that defense, and they're all going to just have like a different. And this is kind of me hoping, to a sense, but it just seems like they're going to come out with a little bit of a more juice with that crowd noise. And I think the Vikings come out on top. And I was kind of sitting similar to where you were at. But I can't pick it within 3 points, or I can't do that. It can't come down to special teams. We're not going that far, but I think it might be even a little bit more high scoring, because I think both of these defenses kind of struggle at stopping everything to a sense. And I think the Vikings come out, give me a 38-34. I like the pick that you pick of 4 points, but give me 38-34. Vikings keep their season alive. I think if they start 0-3, everyone in that building knows if you start 0-3, your season's dwindling pretty quickly. I think the Vikings start out 1-2, and I'm just gonna give my game ball right now because I have offense this week. I had defense last week. a guy who's struggled through the first 2 weeks. I'm going to kind of compare it to 2020. Didn't play that often in the first 2 weeks of last year. Hasn't struggled. He's had some nice catches, but he's had some drops. Justin Jefferson, go off game. Justin Jefferson's going off. He's going to hit the gritty multiple times against a sold out US Bank Stadium, and that place is going to be electric, and it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, so switching over to game balls, I'm going with Cameron Danslow. It's happening. He's gonna start over Bashad Breeland. He's going to go off. He's gonna win this game for us. And I'm gonna say this because I cannot stress it enough. Danielle Hunter has to be a factor in this game. He has to have similar to what he did last week. And I was kind of getting worried last week because I was like, okay, it seems like we're chasing him a lot instead of just containing him. So late in the game, are we going to be able to get after it? And sure enough, Danielle Hunter was still right there, yanking him down one-handed towards the end of that ball game. Russell Wilson, he's still elusive, he's still fast, he's still shifty, he's all those things. He is not Kyler Murray's athleticism. I don't think he ever has been. I think that they're very different levels. Kyler Murray is just like a freak. But what Russell Wilson will kill you with is I don't think Russell Wilson is throwing 2 interceptions this week, one of them a pick 6. So, there's kind of that give and take. But I do think this defensive line can get to Russell Wilson better than they got to Kyler Murray. So Danielle Hunter, just honorable mention in the game ball. I'm not picking him by any means. I'm picking Danslow. But if the Vikings do want to win this game and kick off the win streak, they're gonna have to contain Wilson and bring him to the ground a couple times, maybe even strip him a time or two. Moving on to something really quickly, I do want to, and this is probably how we'll finish the show. And I'm kind of putting you on the spot because I didn't bring this up. I just kind of got inspiration for it. It seems to me the only road to the playoffs the Vikings are going to have this year after starting 0-2 is to give that 0-2 right back to Green Bay and beat them twice. Is that fair to say that if we can beat Green Bay twice, we can figure out the rest of the schedule, especially if we climb back into things this week with a win?
I think so. It's such a weird start to the NFL season. You see the Saints absolutely obliterate Green Bay, and then the Saints go out and lay an egg against the Carolina Panthers. I think the Lions were in that game with Green Bay for a little while, and then the Packers kind of pulled away. But I think right now the Packers are still kind of the clear-cut favorite to win that division. I don't have, everyone was talking after week 1, is Aaron Rodgers washed up? I don't think so. I think Aaron Rodgers can still sling it, and he's going to continue to do that. That team is going to figure it out. And if the Vikings want a chance at making the playoffs, I don't know if there's a wild card team within this division unless I think I saw a stat today. The NFC North has the worst overall record through the first 2 weeks with 2-6 or whatever it is. And it's not good. There's divisions that I don't know if that's still true or not. I don't think it is, but there's divisions out there that have a possible 3 teams that could make the playoffs. The NFC West is the one that I look at with the Cardinals, the Rams, and potentially the Seahawks and the 49ers. All 4 of those teams are solid football teams, and I wouldn't be shocked to see 3 teams come out of that division. The Vikings have to start winning, and they have to start winning this week if we're going to even continue to talk about the playoffs. I think if they start 0-3, we're going to be starting to talk about looking at the future of this team, looking at future head coaches, talking about what they're going to do in the draft. But, yeah, I think that's fair to say if the Vikings can find a way to even maybe just split with Green Bay, I think they'll be sitting okay. I think this division could come down to the wire. And like I said, it doesn't seem like it's very good right now. And you're going to have to win this division to make it to the playoffs.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I'm getting at I'm not a tank guy. I used to be. I used to think either get the number 1 pick or get the 32nd pick. Not a tank guy. I've been talked out of it. I want to see what this team has. I'd rather this team look all right and then add to the all right to push them into good than be terrible and have to rise up from the ashes or whatever. But it does seem like I think a sweep of Green Bay is necessary considering we started 0-2. And we now have 2 games where even if we lose Sunday and if we start 0-4, I'm giving up on the season. I'll go out on a limb and say there's no chance we're gonna make the playoffs. But if we can get to 1-2 and then potentially 2-2, then I think there's a better shot. But I'm talking about the playoffs just because I do want to end on a happy, optimistic note of what do we have to do to get there, blah, blah, blah. We're 0-2 right now. Let's focus on winning a game. Let's not be the 2017 Cleveland Browns. Let's win a game. Let's get on the scoreboard. We can separate ourselves from Jacksonville and Houston, or not Houston. Houston beat Jacksonville, but like the Jacksonvilles and the Jets, and we can elevate ourselves. Okay, let's all take a breath, and then let's go play Cleveland. And Mike Zimmer might have a couple tricks up his sleeve for the young Stefanski that used to be his quarterbacks coach / offensive coordinator. So a little bit of a tease there for next week. I don't have anything else. I will end with one more thing, and this is unprompted completely. Go follow Jack Day on Twitter. I mean, golly, come on. This dude pumps out just golden content day after day, or week after week. He does this show. He brings an electricity to it. He brings an electricity to his other podcast. Is it State of
Purple?
I couldn't remember the exact name, and I didn't want to butcher it. But like State of Purple, and then not to mention his articles, they're always like, sometimes I'll just look at a headline and I'll just be like, what the heck is this guy on about? And then I click and I read it. Electric stuff from you, man. As always, Jack H. Day, man. Just little round of applause, especially if we start looking at the draft early this year. Oh, man.
Then the articles will be flowing even more.
Jack is going to be pumping article after article out about, what needs to change, who needs to come in, why. Hopefully, this is me influencing Jack, but why Eric Bieniemy will win the Vikings back-to-back Super Bowls, like just all these good things. But Jack H. Day, just an elite sports media person, NFL insider. So big shout out to him. Make sure you're following him on Twitter as well as the show at LTB Vikings. And I don't tweet anymore. I just use the Load the Box Twitter because I'm an old man at this stage in my life. But, you can follow me. I'm right there at jhawthorne16. Tom Day saying, I just read the headlines. That is, of course, offensive line appreciator Tom Day, who I'm sure had a good time watching that game until that kick last week. But that's that's all I've got. Chat closed. Jack, I'm passing it over. Oh, I guess you're over here. Jack, I'm passing it over to you to get me ready to run through this damn wall, Jack. I need something, man. I need a win.
Yeah, I think we're all going to be ready to run through a brick wall, whether you're watching from home or if you're fortunate enough to be within US Bank Stadium. I know you're looking forward to a lot more, hopefully a 2-2 team instead of an 0-4 team for when you get to travel up and experience your first game within US Bank Stadium, which I hope they're 2-2 at that time, because it's going to make your experience a lot more fun seeing it for the first time. But I'm just jacked up to get this team back in the state of Minnesota. I think it's needed to play in front of a sold out US Bank Stadium crowd. That's going to be like, I'm not saying it's going to be Minneapolis Miracle electric, or probably not even quite as electric as it was when Teddy Bridgewater entered that game in 2017 and Case Keenum was getting everyone fired up. But it's going to be extremely loud. It's going to be Metrodome-esque, like just everyone's going to be screaming, and I'm excited to see this. I mean, we've had to watch it for 2 consecutive weeks where we get to watch other fan bases, although it was pretty loud when the Vikings defense was on the field in Arizona. That was an impressive showing by the Vikings fan base after a disappointing loss in week 1. I think that's going to be times 1,000 at US Bank Stadium. The offense is already rolling. They're I wouldn't say they're on a hot streak, but we're seeing flashes of Kirk Cousins that we haven't seen in years past. He almost broke. He's close to Peyton Manning and Steve frickin' Young. I mean, how can you not be excited about that? Kirk Cousins playing phenomenal football. There's weapons all over on this offensive side of the ball. Mike Zimmer is a defensive-minded head coach, and this defense, eventually it's going to gel. I think the defense showed like ups and downs last year with just a bunch of rookies. This is a bunch of veterans. And I think once Mike Zimmer kind of realizes that, I think the stubbornness, like you said earlier, it's got to go out the window. If Bashaud Breeland's struggling, it's got to be a next man up philosophy. Get Cameron Dantzler out there. I'm very hopeful. I don't know if this is necessarily the case or not, but if Anthony Barr is back out there, that is a missing piece that this defense desperately needs. And I think that could kind of help revitalize what's been missing over the first 2 weeks. So I'm jacked up about this team still. It's not quite time to panic yet. Next week, come back and find out if it is time to panic, because if the Vikings are 0-3, I'm almost assuring you that Jordan and I will be in a complete different spirit than what we were in tonight. But I'm looking forward to this one, and you and I both think the Vikings come out on top. It's feeling like really, really strange that there's so much optimism after an 0-2 football team. But like I said, they're coming back to play at home. It's going to be a sold-out crowd, and it's going to be a fun one. most importantly, Skol as always.